Last year, I had the opportunity to go to my first comedy stand-up show. It took place in Sydney, and the show was hosted by Lewis Spears. Lewis is a comedian on YouTube whose content mainly consists of comedic takes on different topics and news online. The show was part of a larger tour around Australia called No Slide Season. This was my first time watching him live, so I was excited for it. As I sat waiting for the show to begin, I thought back to my history with the channel. The first video I ever watched was Lewis Spears' Lou review of Adrian Van Holmen's book. The main content on his channel is a series called Lou Review, where he takes a look at different topics that have surfaced on the internet, giving his own comedic take on them. Unlike many of the other channels that I watched that are based in the US, it was a nice change of pace to watch someone from Australia. He also seemed to be into series that I liked, such as Dragon Ball or Star Wars, based on the figures that are in his background. Since I couldn't find any reviews on YouTube about his actual live shows, I decided to try making one for myself. As a disclaimer, this was my first stand-up that I've been to in person, as I've mentioned. I've seen a few stand-up clips on YouTube of people such as Russell Peters or Bill Burr, but I haven't actually gone to one before. I hope this video provides more insight for people that haven't been to a stand-up show before and what the environment is like. Overall, I found the show to be entertaining and had a good time. One aspect of Lewis's comedy is going against censorship from the Australian government and authorities that consider his humor too offensive. Through this process of trying to control or restrict the type of comedy that occurs, the authorities end up providing more material. This was present to a certain extent during his stand-up as well. One aspect of Lewis's comedy that I didn't always get was references to Australian culture or products, since I am a foreigner. Examples include places like Blacktown, which is where a few people in the audience had come from to watch the show, or franchises such as Sizzler. However, the jokes provided enough context to get a general understanding of what those references were intended to mean. In terms of the topics covered, I was glad that they weren't only topics that were already covered in Lewis's YouTube channel. There were a few similar topics, such as jokes about his height and living in Melbourne, but there were other topics as well, such as funny anecdotes about his previous girlfriend or the last Hitler alive. It should be noted that most of his topics are mature content and generally not safe for work, which is what I believe the original intent was. While I believe there are sensitive topics that are more difficult to make clever and insightful jokes about, many comedians are not afraid to approach those topics and point out something that is funny in a certain view. For example, Lewis talked about the last Hitler alive getting arrested for pedophilia, and how in a way, it's an improvement for the Hitler family. In the setting of a stand-up, such jokes that would be more difficult to bring up in other social settings can be stated, giving a sense of emotional catharsis to the audience for being able to hear about sensitive topics in another light. One aspect to a live stand-up that I was afraid of was the idea of getting called out by the comedian, which I saw happen from several YouTube clips, where someone in the audience would shout out something to the comedian, or the comedian would ask a question to the audience, creating a type of dialogue. While the idea of talking to someone in a crowd was frightening for me, I was surprised by how many people were willing to engage with Lewis through answering questions or calling something out to him. Perhaps it is once again the setting that allows for general social anxiety to be reduced, as people feel more comfortable stepping out of their comfort zones through the power of comedy. It made me better appreciate how stand-up is not just about preparing jokes, but also being able to improvise different jokes through interactions with the audience that Lewis was able to pull off. He also managed to do 2 shows in the same night, for the show that I went to was the first one. He even held a brief session where he signed and took pictures with people before his next show, which showed his dedication to his fans. As I was leaving, he actually brushed past my left shoulder, which surprised me enough that I didn't register it until later. While I wanted to take a photo with him, there were around 50 people waiting in line, so I decided to take a picture from far away and leave. Later last year, I also attended the live Luke and Lewis show at Sydney. They were both comedians, so it was a good chance to see Luke and Lewis work off one another through a dialogue, as well as make more casual jokes compared to the more structured stand-up jokes, thanks to the setting of a podcast. The sections involving the editor Keelan were interesting as well, and although there were more delays than I anticipated throughout the show, it contributed to the more casual setting of the event. I might have seen Keelan during Lewis's comedy tour, as he did the filming during the event and took photos after the event, so it was nice to see more of the man behind the camera. Once again, I lacked the knowledge of Australian culture, such as a celebrity guest named Mike Goldstein, but it was still entertaining to watch them have a discussion with him about his Instagram account. Although it is unlikely that I'll be able to go to another stand-up in the near future due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm glad that I was able to take the time to go to a stand-up when I could and experience what it's like.
Thank you for watching.